Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located on planet Earth. It's time for our Thinking Outside the Bots podcast. Long time no here, but we're here today. And today is Tuesday, August the 15th, 2023. Hopefully, everyone is having a wonderful start to the day. And let's jump into the pre market because we're going to just have a conversation. So much has gone on and things are happening all over the world since I did my last podcast. Now, I've been very busy. I've been in the lab. You guys know I'm a lab rat. I stay in the lab because my main focus and purpose always is to make sure that the pulse waves are on point and that clients can benefit and reap the rewards of my labor. So, without further ado, let's look at what's happening in the overnight markets. Well, the US dollar index, believe it or not, broke the 103 handle. Yeah, last week we're at what, 101, right? Now we're at 103. So the US dollar powered up a little bit and it's down a little bit right now. It's down 16 pips at 103.02. The euro right now is up about 20 pips at 109.42. Pound sterling up 46 pips at 127.24. The Aussie is down 5 pips at 64.81. The Bitcoin futures is up only 5 at 29,400. Ethereum unchanged at 1845.50. As far as crude oil futures are down almost a buck at $81.57 a barrel. Nat gas is off 8 cents at $2.71. Gold down almost 10 bucks at $1,934.20 an ounce. Silver down about 20 cents at $22.51 an ounce. Copper is off 3 cents at $3.68. The Dow futures down 269 at 35,102. The S&P 500 down 28.5 at 4477.5. And the NASDAQ 100 futures are down 73.5 at 15,196 and 3/4. Russell down 16 at $1,912.20. You got the soybean futures down almost 4 cents at $13.22 a bushel. Corn is off 3 cents at $4.84 a bushel. And your wheat is off almost 9 cents at 607 and a quarter per bushel. Now let's take a look and see if we see any 2-bar Charlie setups. And so far, scanning, not seeing any yet. Let's scroll down, see what we can find. Sometimes you get a really nice one. I know we had one last week. It was beautiful. Nope. A lot of consolidation in these markets too. If you missed last night's end of day report, you're definitely going to want to take a listen to that when you get a chance later on, because I did go over quite a few charts and showed you where the bias was currently are in the market. For those that don't know, who are maybe new or just tuning into the channel, a lot of market activity and movement, like the historical market crashes and explosive one-day rallies, they all occur under the auspices of a trend momentum reading, whether that be a bearish trend momentum reading or a bullish trend momentum reading. That is when you get your biggest one-day moves, because price action is like a magnet in the direction of the trend momentum, not the long-term or intermediate-term trends or short-term trends, but the trend momentum. That determines the up and downs of any market on any given day. That's why we've been able to move with like pinpoint type accuracy, knowing what's coming, because we use the trend momentum readings. And most people don't even know what that is about. Even people who've been trading 30 and plus years have never even heard of it, don't know anything about it. And that's because It's one of those things where if you know, you know. If you don't, then you don't. And to be quite frank with you, there's no way to really have long term, consistent success without it. All right. So, off of that, what's going on in the world? Well, as you know, it's been all over the news. They've been indicting Trump. It seems like he gets indicted 3 or 4 times a week for something different, something new. I'm not a Trump fan, not a Trump supporter, didn't vote for Trump. But I mean, you don't have to be a genius to see the bread and circus pony show that they're trouting out before us. They know that if they keep the divide in the country going, Democrats versus Republicans, people will be too blindsided to see what's really going on. As long as they get you focused on that dog and pony show, they're not going to see the man behind the curtain and what he's really up to. And that's what they want. They want to keep the country divided, because if the country's divided, then that means what? The people aren't coming together. If the people come together with one mind, that will be a problem for the tyrannical movement within the US government. They want total control. Why do you think the US, in the press, they dog China, but in the government boardrooms, they're praising China? They love Xi Jinping's tyrannical communist government, how they control everything in their country. They control the flow of information. They control all narratives. They control people's physical movement. They even control people's well-being. They can make it so that you can't eat. They can make it so that you can't even leave your house. All right? They have total lockdown. Before you even heard the word lockdown, China was already locked down and has been locked down for decades. And governments around the world have studied China's communist government regime, and they have fallen in love with it. They want to mimic it. They think it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. And that's why there's been such a push in that direction. And because the sleaze stacks in the higher echelons of government, they control the media, which means they control the printing press, they control the narrative. So they can create and do whatever they want. And then they can Jedi mind trick the unsuspecting masses to believe whatever they want them to believe. They control your emotions. They have your brain in the palm of their hand. And because they control the media and they control social media, you don't even know what you don't know. Case in point, they got the people to believe not only was there a nationwide medical emergency, but there was a global wide medical emergency. It wasn't. But you couldn't prove that it wasn't because people were expiring all around you. That's all you heard in the media. Some of you even know people who are no longer with us, who were made unalive. The reason why the ruse was so ingeniously manufactured is that they took a well-known seasonal aspect of modern society, which is the common flu, knowing that there are innumerable strains of the flu. And they just said, let's repackage this. Let's not call it the flu. Let's call it wah. And by doing so, no one can disprove. You can't say it doesn't exist because you know your grandmama is no longer with us. Your auntie is no longer with us. Your daughter, your son, your brother, your sister, your spouse, your best friend, no longer with us. So when you see unaliveness all around you, you can't debunk or debate what is being told to you because people are dropping. That's why it was so ingenious. Are you getting this? The flu makes people unalive all over the world on an annual basis by the tens of thousands. It's just what it is. It doesn't matter if you're in a third world country or if you are in a first world country, people still expire due to the flu. It's just human existence. All right? Let's rename it to womp 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 and say that it started in a laboratory in womp womp womp, and that's the cover story. You could even say it started in a marketplace of, let's call it a food court in womp womp womp, and no one can debunk it because in a 24-hour news cycle, all you're seeing is scientists and doctors being paraded in front of you along with high government officials, part of the Slee Stack order, and they are parroting the narrative. News anchors parroting the narrative. Radio talk hosts parroting the narrative. Everywhere you turn, the narrative is being parroted to the point when once they stop parroting the narrative, now you don't hear them doing it anymore because the people are the parrots. They don't have to say anything because you're going to say it for them. How many videos did you see on social media of people losing their minds because they saw someone not wearing a mask? Remember the famous video, the lady throwing hot coffee on dude who was just sitting on a bench outside reading a newspaper, minding his business. And because he wasn't wearing a mask, the couple walked by and the lady kirked out and splashed hot coffee on him. And what did he do? Being a chivalrous individual, he didn't put hands on the woman. Nah, he proceeded to stomp the boyfriend out. How many videos like that did you see? You can't even remember. There's been so many, right? That's what they do. A lie, not corrected in time, becomes truth in the mind. And that's what they did. They just kept pushing it. So now you can't even have a conversation with the average individual because they already have been programmed, psychologically programmed to the point where it has become inoperable. You cannot change the surgical implant in the mind. See, they didn't have to physically put a chip in your brain when all they had to do is use the Jedi mind tricks of psychology with the same outcome. So now they don't have to worry about it. You ain't got to chip nobody. You just use enough propaganda and in the right way, nonstop. Sort of like the scene in Clockwork Orange when they had dude strapped to the chair and it had his eyelids open so that he couldn't blink, he couldn't close his eyes, and they had the screen in front of him and it's flashing thousands and thousands of just the wildest images you could even imagine. And they're doing that for 24 hours straight, days straight, weeks straight. Doesn't take that long for the person to become brainwashed. Well, those type of social experiments have been done on the masses for decades, for generations. And now it's gotten to the point where they're more effective with it because they have technology now. They can make it a lot easier for them to manipulate the masses. And that's what they do. So now not only do you have to combat all of the propaganda, but now you have a harder uphill battle to win the battle for your mind, because it's a battle for your mind, not just a battle for your soul, but it's a battle for your mind as well. And the mind needs to be protected. How many of you, under the sound of my voice, show of hands, have noticed that some things that you used to be able to tolerate, you can no longer tolerate in the forms of entertainment because you have been enlightened. You see what's happening as it's happening. And immediately, this is not true. That's that's the skin of the truth stuffed with a lie. And you pick up on these things and you're like, you know what? I thought I was going to enjoy this movie, but I can't because the movie is really not a movie. It's propaganda under the disguise of entertainment. And you're no longer entertained. Now you're disgusted with all of the propaganda. You've been propaganded to death to the point where now you have developed an allergic reaction to propaganda. And as soon as you are exposed to it, you go into anaphylactic shock. You can no longer tolerate the foolishness. But the average person around you who doesn't have a nut allergy to the nutty information that is being propagated, they seem to be all right with it. And they consume a steady diet of it. And it doesn't bother them. Why? Because they have been vaccinated against the truth to the point now where if they hear the truth or anything that challenges the narrative of propaganda that they have been force fed, they will automatically throw up. They'll start to convulse until you stop talking. That's how it works. So if you've been struggling to understand why it's harder for you to share things with your friends and loved ones these days to the point where you found it pretty much impossible, this is why. And you shouldn't be shocked by it. We were told thousands of years ago that this was going to be the case, that there will come a time where people can no longer endure sound doctrine. They cannot endure the truth. What is sound doctrine? Sound doctrine is the truth. They can't handle truth of any caliber. Why do you think it was so easy to get the masses to agree to the removal of the police in their area? Let's defund the police. There was no debate around the issue, no discussion around the issue. It was just push, push, push propaganda. Push, push, push. Don't allow any dissenting voices. Push, push, push. And let's create a false grassroots movement, all right, to make it seem that it's organic and the people will rally behind this. This will help to distract from what we're doing. It's called controlled opposition, where it appears that the people are rising up and against something, but they're really not. They are a distraction from what's really going on. So, did anyone stop to think, what does it mean if you take away the police? Well, what do police do? They provide law and order. Now, we know about corruption in the United States of America. The corruption, it flows from the top down. We have corrupted government officials. We have corrupt government departments. We have corrupt police. All right. We know this. Now, that doesn't take away from the hardworking, honest Americans who work in government and who are even police. There are good ones. I met some good ones. In my lifetime, I have known amazing police officers. All right. Righteous, upstanding people, full of mercy and grace, who did not prejudge people when they encountered them, when they responded to a call. I've seen some able to talk people down, an armed man, talk him down without even brandishing your own firearm. I've seen police officers that have so much respect in their community that they never even had to pull their gun from their holster ever, because their name means something in the community that they police. People know them by name. They know the citizenry by name, especially in small towns where you've grown up with your community. Everyone knows you since elementary school, so it's a little bit easier, you know. And you police different in those type of settings where everyone knows everybody. It's a different environment altogether. Big cities is a lot harder because it's a big city. You got tens of millions of people. We're in a small town. We're talking about thousands, not millions, not tens of millions. So it's a lot easier to police those type of situations. Oh, I'm not going to arrest Bob. Bob's drunk again. He's just stumbling out the bar. Now in a big city, that person would be arrested and taken to the holding tank and to detox before standing before a judge for public intoxication. But in a small town, everyone knows that, Bob is the town drunk. He's harmless. He doesn't harm a fly. He just drinks and gets you drunk, and that's it. And the police see him. They may give him a ride home or whatever, while he's stumbling out of the bar, because they know that's Bob. Bob was a good dude. He's just a town drunk, but he's harmless. He doesn't hurt nobody. He doesn't rob. He doesn't steal. He doesn't do anything wrong. He's just a town drunk. They see Bob. They make sure he's good, and then they move about their business. And if you notice, in the small towns too, you don't hear too many cases of the Kens and Karens, because everybody knows everybody. Oh, that's Miss Mabel. She is the town snitch. She's the nosy neighbor that looks out the window, but not in a bad way. She's the kind of person that when you come back from vacation, she'll say, yeah, so-and-so came around for you. Oh, here's this right here. I got the mail for you. Oh, I fed your cat. I walked the dog. That kind of person who kind of keeps everybody safe. They know what's going on. They can alert you to what's going on. That kind of thing. People in small communities know what I'm talking about. But this was an overwhelming outcry of defund the police. If police primary job is to bring law and order, then what does the opposite do? If you remove the police who stand for law and order, what do you get? Answer: lawlessness. Lawlessness. What is lawlessness? It's the quality or condition of being without regard for the law. Behavior that is contrary to or shows indifference to the law. It is the state or condition of being without law or law enforcement to provide control or restraint. If you take away the police, you no longer have control or restraint. To restraint means to restrain sin. That is what the police are there for, to restrain sin. That's why in the Bible we're told that the righteous don't have to fear the one that bears the sword. That's the government's job, to bear the sword, law and order, to protect borders and bring about law and order, make sure that people's person and property are protected. That is the primary role of government. In a nutshell, boom, protection. Protect the borders from invasion, protect the homeland from invasion, and to instill law and order. Make sure that sin does not go unrestrained. The sword is for lawbreakers, all right? Those that obey the law don't have to fear the police because you're not breaking the law. So in general, as a general rule of thumb, If you are a law-abiding citizen, you do not have to be afraid of the law. You dig what I'm saying? But now, if you are riding dirty, then yeah, you need to be terrified of the law. You don't want to be pulled over for anything because you ride dirty. You may have bench warrants. You may have outstanding parking tickets. You may have a body in the trunk. You may have controlled substances hidden in the car, in the compartments of the car. Then, yeah, you really do need to be in fear of the law because you're breaking the law. You're not abiding by the law. But the average law-abiding citizen has no need to worry. Now, notice how in the majority, not all, but in the majority of cases where they want you to say, see, look, the police are out of control, right? It's always a case of a person breaking the law. And then they're surprised when things get pushed to the next level. Case in point, man robs old lady at gunpoint at the ATM machine. Old lady on fixed income, can barely afford to eat, has to make tough choices every month. Do I get my prescriptions for my medical conditions, or do I buy food to eat to survive? She goes to the ATM to take the money out because she has finally made the decision, I have to eat. You come up to her with a gun at gunpoint, loaded gun, pistol to the dome, saying, run it. And then you run away. You did not know that the police were right behind you. You didn't see them. They saw you. Now they're in pursuit. You are an armed suspect, caught in the act. The police say, freeze, drop the weapon. You don't. You get shot. They may have unloaded 100 rounds on you. What do we see in the news? This is a travesty. This is a miscarriage of justice. How can the police? They shot this man 100 times. They didn't have to do that. That is excessive force. So let me get this straight. You break the law. You threaten the life of an old woman who is on a fixed income, who can barely afford to eat. And now you complain because of the level of justice that was put on you. See, like the scripture says, because God does not always judge sin harshly right then and there on the spot, people continue to sin because they feel, well, I've always gotten away with sin. But like God said in his word, the wages of sin is death. That's right, death. Have you ever just sat down and thought and contemplated just for a moment the catastrophic outcome of what occurred in the Garden of Eden? Now, mind you, the Garden of Eden was a place of perfection. It was the most perfect place. It was perfect. Perfect conditions, perfect weather. You didn't have to work. Food just came out of the ground and fell off trees on its own. You didn't have to plant. You didn't have to till the garden. You didn't have to prune. You didn't have to do nothing. You're in a perfect environment. Everything around you is organic. No GMO. The air is pristine. The water is pristine. Everything is perfect. Perfect. To the point where you, as Adam, were able to name all the animals. God brought them to you and you named them. Now, have you considered even what that means. That means that in order for you to name the lion, God had to bring the lion before you. When he did this, it was without fear that the lion was going to eat you. The grizzly bear, the rattlesnake, the scorpion, all these things he brought before you, and then you named them without fear of death. Adam and Eve were in a perfect environment where there was no death, no GMO. The air, the water, the food was not poisoned like today. And yet, something happened. Because they ate a piece of fruit off of a tree, the entire cosmos, the entire universe was thrown into chaos. And from that moment on, the clock started ticking. That's when the first, second, and third law of thermodynamics kicked in. No longer are you in a perfect environment. No, now everything around you has changed because sin has now entered into the world. Now everything has become corrupted for your sake. And if that wasn't bad enough, another calamity happened after that. When Cain killed his brother Abel. Yeah. Now, what happened there was the curse of now you're going to have to work for everything. Oh, and matter of fact, the ground is not going to yield to you 150% of its produce. Now you're going to have to work for it. And now blight and mildew and pest and vermin are going to come and they're going to destroy your crops and you're going to struggle and suffer because of what you have done to your brother. So you have all this chaos and calamity that has entered into the world. But God, being just and merciful, has given us parameters. And now evil is not allowed to go to its fullest extent. So if you look at the most evil tyrants in the world, you look at your Adolf Hitlers and Mussolinis and all that. Yeah, they were evil and they did evil, but they didn't do everything that was in their heart that they wanted to do. God did not allow them to go but so far. And that's with every human being. God restrains sin. And one of the mechanisms that were put in place for that was authority. God instituted government, authority, for the purpose of restraining sin, repelling sin. So when you take police away, it is not a leap to understand that we have lawlessness now in the United States of America. It's not a case of race. It is a matter of sin. It is a heart issue. For we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and rulers of darkness in high places. There is a spiritual realm to everything that is happening today, whether evil human beings are aware of what they are doing or not. There is a spiritual dynamic to everything that is happening. It's not a Democrat versus Republican issue. It's a sin issue. And we see that going to its logical conclusion. And that's what we are seeing happening in this country. Now, we talked about one of the aspects of the calamities that came from the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. And today we're witnessing one of those calamities playing out in real time right now. What am I talking about? Food prices. They are crazy high right now, but they're soon going to go a lot higher. In the book of Revelation, it talks about how junk food for the most part. Barley, not the nice wheat, but barley, not rice, but barley. Okay. Well, for illustrative purposes, we'll say barley represents GMO in processed foods. Barley is going to cost you a day's wage. Now, notice how it didn't break down the type of work that a person does. We know that some people are paid a higher wage than others. We know that there are different occupations. We know that the dude that is serving you at the fast food restaurant is not making what the cardiologist is making, unless he owns said restaurant or a chain of restaurants. That's different. But the average worker is not going to make at a fast food restaurant what the cardiologist is making. Notice how the scriptures did not make a distinction between that. It said a day's wage, period. That means that the cost of the lowest form of nutrition is going to cost you a day's wage. What it's saying is it going to become so astronomically expensive that the average person, regardless of occupation, will barely be able to afford to eat. That day is coming, ladies and gentlemen, and it's already upon us now. Over the past few years, have we not seen food prices in the United States, along with other wealthy countries, do things that they have never done before, ever? Well, unfortunately, this is just the beginning. Global food supplies are getting tighter, and meanwhile, global demand for food just continues to increase. For decades, among the elite, they put on a face of optimism that someday we'll be able to eliminate global hunger completely because tremendous progress was made in technology. But then, right around 2015, things started to reverse. And now the trend is very much going in the wrong direction. According to the United Nations, 2.4 billion people did not have enough food to eat last year, and 900 million of them were facing severe food insecurity. Those numbers will almost certainly go even higher in 2023 because it is getting more difficult for poor countries to get the food that they need to feed their populations. For example, rice. Rice is a core staple for billions of people around the world, and India is the most important exporter of rice by a very wide margin. More than half of the rice imports in around 42 countries originate from India, and in many African nations, India's market share in rice imports surpassed 80%, according to some estimates. And top consuming countries in Asia like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, the share of rice consumption in total calorie intake per day ranges from 40% to 67%. Now, in India, although it has severely restricted rice exports at this time, what are those nations going to do as a result of these restrictions? According to the BBC, India's export ban has sparked worries about runaway global rice prices. Now, for those of you who are in Canada on the Winnipeg Exchange, you can trade canola and rough rice. Can't really do that here without a little bit of ingenuity. But white rice dominates around 70% of the global trade, and India has now ceased its export of this commodity. So this comes on top of the country's ban last year of exports of broken rice and a 20% duty on non-basmati rice. Not surprisingly, July's export ban has sparked worries about runaway global rice prices. It's already starting to happen, folks. In fact, the price of Thai white rice is already up over 50% since the start of 2022. On Wednesday, the Thai Rice Exporters Association revealed that the price of Thai white rice 5% broken, a key Asian benchmark, reached the highest level since great financial crisis. This surge is mainly attributed to increasing fears of a global shortage due to the damaging efforts of the El Nino weather phenomenon on Asian farmlands and India's recent decision to restrict certain rice exports. Thai white rice 5% broken hit $640 per ton, the highest level since October of 2008. Prices are up over 50% since the start of 2022. And you know it's not just the price of rice that has been rising at your local grocery store. Oh no. Here in the United States, just about everything in our grocery stores is becoming a lot more expensive. Americans are noticing a lot of sold out notes on Costco shelves in the past few weeks. Shortages of household supplies and basic grocery items seem to be rapidly spreading across Costco warehouses. However, most of the complaints have been published by shoppers that just can't believe the price hikes they're seeing at their local store. One major example of this was the 250% increase in the price of 40 packs of Kirkland branded water bottles. One Redditor reported it that the bulk buy, which costs $1.44 as recently as a year ago, now costs $4.99. That used to be the case at the beginning of the year. Just checked the other day, and the $4.99 price is utterly ridiculous, they stated. Now, they also noticed that crab legs have more than doubled in price over the past year. King crab legs went from $23 a pound to $48 a pound. That's a 110% increase. It has been difficult for shoppers to find chicken nuggets in stock at Costco, as they are often sold out in the frozen section due to the high demand. They used to cost $13 for a 4-pound bag, but are now going for almost $20, causing some customers to express their displeasure with the price hike on Reddit. Have you noticed similar things where you live? Well, it's only going to get worse. Now, they talk about in the Western world that even higher prices are coming because of a global famine that has begun. That's right. Scientists are already calling it a global famine. And in a recent article by James Lasher, he explained that many Americans are feverishly preparing for even harder times ahead. The price of groceries continue to rise, putting millions on edge about the availability of food across the U.S. Many are bracing for even harder times to hit the country and are preparing much like Joseph did as a ruler of Egypt before the famine struck in the book of Genesis. But if you listen only to the mainstream media, they're making it seem as though nothing is amiss at all, nothing to see here, not a problem. For example, the following comes from an article that USA Today posted entitled, "Need an Afternoon Sweet Treat? McDonald's new Peanut Butter Crunch McFlurry is out now." If you've been able to recover from McDonald's purple grimace shakes, the fast food chain has a new sweet treat available for a limited time. Just try not to pass out this time for a viral TikTok trend, all right? The Peanut Butter Crunch McFlurry debuted Wednesday at participating locations nationwide. The dessert is made with vanilla soft serve and blended with crispy cereal mix and chunks of chocolatey peanut butter cookie. See, everything must be just great if this is the front page news, right? Amazingly, this sort of nonsense passes for journalism these days. They're not telling you guys the truth, so don't expect to hear it. But you know what's really creepy for me? And this is just me. For those that have been following my channel for some time now, you know that I showed you a phenomenon in the markets. And this is a phenomenon that shows that before a bubble begins in a particular market, they always crash it to the dust first. Well, have you been taking note? If you are a subscriber to the Pulse Wave Reports, you will notice that the grain markets have been driven into the dust, just declining in price, just in a runaway bear market, locked in bear market. Every rally in the market being sold off promptly, and then new weekly lows continuing to hit. Right now, as we speak, the grain markets are flirting with putting in new 52-week lows. I have a sneaking suspicion what's going to happen. And that is that once soybeans, corn, and wheat futures take out the 52-week lows, there's going to be a dramatic reversal immediately. And then the prices are just going to explode going into next year. I have that sneaking suspicion because the effects of the drought and the floods and all the wild weather is going to reap havoc next year in 2024. Right now, you don't feel it because you're still eating from all the produce that came up this year. But they're already saying that next year is looking bad, real bad, to the point where you may not see any potatoes in the store at all or any wheat products. Now, most people may say, I don't eat potatoes no way. That doesn't affect me. Who cares? Who cares? But here's the problem, though. Although you may not eat potatoes, guaranteed, unless you have a wheat allergy, you eat wheat. Because they put wheat in just about every product you can think of. And if they don't use wheat, they're using corn. Even in meat products, when you go to get your side of beef or your ground beef, did you know that in most cases, there's either wheat or corn byproduct in that? Yep. So what happens when there's no wheat and they can't get any corn? That means a lot of produced, pre-boxed stuff is going to be missing off the shelf. Think about it. Wheat and corn is in just about everything we eat. Straight up. That's a problem, folks. That is a huge problem. Now, with that being said, though, if you think, well, I only eat soy products or I'm a vegan, here's your problem. Although soybeans have been declining also, we still right now for the front month contract in the soybeans, which is a November contract, we still got beans in the teens. It's over $13 a bushel. So we have maintained, folks, a 300% rise in the cost of soybeans since 1999. Soybeans have risen 300%. And it has stayed there. In 1999, we were at $4. Corn went as low as $2.50. Corn today is over $6. Actually, no, right now it's at just under $5. But you get my point. It's still hundreds of percent higher than it was in 1999. All right. So this is something for you to think about. There will be no safe escape. It won't be. Everything is going to go up in price. Now, we started off this conversation this morning talking about lawlessness. Well, here are the ramifications and repercussions of said lawlessness. Did you know that some parts of America are already on the verge of being ungovernable as rampant lawlessness spreads like wildfire? Now, we talked about in order for a civilized society to function, most people have to be willingly following the rules of that society. If that happens, law enforcement authorities can deal with the few that choose to be lawless. For generations, that is how things worked in America. There was a high standard of morality among the general population. And so the police were able to successfully handle the few bad apples that insisted on breaking the law. But now everything has changed. And one of the unintended consequences of this change came, excuse me, on the back of a shift in morality being taught at the university level. They start saying to you everything is relative. They start saying to you that really there's no such thing as morality. Morality is whatever you want it to be, feeding into the sinful carnal nature of man who is rebellious at his core. Rebellion is in the heart of man. So for you to stoke that on the intellectual level, what do? You take a hot iron to a person's conscience and you sear it. So as a result of decades of extreme moral decay, lawlessness is rampant, and there are vast multitudes of young people that openly flaunt the rules of our society. In fact, there are already some areas of the country that are literally on the verge of being ungovernable. A perfect example of what I'm talking about happened in Southern California. Dozens of lawless young thieves systematically looted the Nordstrom store at the Westfield Topanga Mall, and they were able to get away with tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. Shoppers at the Westfield Topanga Mall in how you say that? Kanaga Park, were in for quite a shark when dozens of thieves ransacked the Nordstrom inside the mall on Saturday, August the 12th, smashing displays and stealing an estimated $60,000 to $100,000 worth of merchandise, authorities stated. The Los Angeles Police Department responded to the mall at around 4 p.m. after hearing reports that between 20 and 50 people ran through Nordstrom grabbing merchandise, leaving some of the ground and taking armfuls with them. Now, when I was growing up, this sort of thing simply did not happen. Ever. But now we're seeing mobs of looters go haywire all over the nation on a regular basis. This is the unintended consequence of defunding the police. This is what you asked for, right? The heist was obviously well coordinated, and not one of the thieves even showed a shred of remorse. Apparently, these young people are not exactly languishing in poverty because a BMW and a Lexus were among the getaway vehicles that they used. After grabbing between $60,000 to $100,000 worth of goods, the crew fled in several cars, including a BMW and a Lexus, cops said. At least one guard was dosed with bear spray, which causes violent eye and respiratory irritation in humans. The guard was treated by paramedics. Now, pepper spray is bad enough, but bear spray, come on. That right there is almost like attempted murder. Come on, man. How are we supposed to respond to this? As was stated earlier, we are seeing robberies of this nature so often now. And it's not just a West Coast thing, it even happens on the East Coast. Several days earlier, dozens of young people looted the St. Lawrence store in Glendale. And that's a high-end designer store in Glendale, California. And it was looted by dozens of people in another flash mob burglary. At least 30 suspects flooded the St. Lawrence store and the Americana, a brand, Tuesday afternoon and stole clothing and other merchandise before fleeing on foot and leaving the location in numerous vehicles, said police in a statement. The total loss is estimated to be approximately $300,000. Some people attempt to downplay the severity of these crimes by saying that these big corporate retailers can afford the losses they are experiencing. No, they can't. Overall, U.S. retailers will lose more than $100 billion due to theft this year alone. This has become a major national crisis, and as J. Lee Grady has aptly pointed out, we truly have become the land of the free for all. You've probably seen the videos of thieves filling trash bags with stolen merchandise from CVS or walking out of a Home Depot or Walmart with armloads of tools, laptops, detergent, and athletic shoes they didn't pay for. We used to call this shoplifting, and it was a crime. Today it's known as inventory shrinkage, and it costs retailers billions of dollars in losses. But many soft on crime politicians are treating criminals like victims and allowing the crime wave to continue and grow and blossom and flourish. Some retailers are locking items behind glass cases, but that hasn't stopped brazen criminals who just smash and grab. Other retailers actually warn employees not to try to stop thieves, and they will even fire an employee for confronting a shoplifter. Welcome to the USA in 2023. We were once known as the land of the free. Now we are the land of the free for all, where criminals can take whatever they want from store shelves, knowing that no one will stop them. A lot of the theft is being fueled by the worst drug crisis in the entire history of our nation. Today, vast stretches of the city of Los Angeles has been transformed into giant homeless encampments that are filled with zombie-like residents smoking drugs. Shocking new photos lay bare the devastating homeless crisis tormenting downtown Los Angeles, where filthy, ramshackle tent cities are plagued by zombie like residents smoking drugs while others hawk stolen goods on street corners. There are currently an estimated 42,260 people sleeping rough in the city of Los Angeles. For those that are not familiar with the term sleeping rough, that is a UK slang jargon for being homeless, sleeping on the streets, sleeping rough. Now, this is a startling 10% rise compared to just last year, Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority reported. Now, what has emerged in the city has resorted to sending mobile teams with oxygen cylinders to Skid Row in a desperate bid to prevent overdoses amid its crippling opioid crisis. The same thing is happening in San Francisco, in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, you name a city. In fact, conditions have become so dangerous in downtown San Francisco that federal employees that work at the Nancy Pelosi Federal Building are being told to work from home for the foreseeable future. Officials at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services advised hundreds of employees in San Francisco to work remotely for the foreseeable future due to public safety concerns outside the Nancy Pelosi Federal Building on 7th Street. The imposing 18-story tower on the corner of 7th and Mission Streets houses various federal agencies, including HHS, the U.S. Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and the Office of Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. The area is also home to one of the city's most brazen open-air drug markets, where dozens of dealers and users congregate on a daily basis. You know, taking you back to 1987. and the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C., open air drug market. You've heard me talk about that before. Now, isn't it fitting that one of the city's most brazen open air drug markets is operating right outside of a giant office tower named for Nancy Pelosi? Politicians such as Pelosi have been making horrendously bad decisions for decades, and that has been a major factor in getting us to this point. Once again, unintended consequences. We're truly reaping what we have sown. And what we are currently experiencing is just the beginning. Eventually, conditions will deteriorate so dramatically in our core urban areas that leaders will be forced to implement extreme measures in desperate attempt to restore order. But ultimately, you can't govern vast numbers of people that have no intention of being governed. The fabric of our society really is coming apart at the seams, and we're going to see things happen in the years ahead that will completely shock all of us. I have a prediction. I believe that that's who and what the FEMA camps are for. That's right. That's what I believe. And I believe you're going to see it. It's going to happen because they're not going to have any other place to put the people. Where do you put them? Again, lawlessness, the spirit of lawlessness is here and it's alive and well in a U.S. city near you. Just something to think about today, folks. Just something to think about. All right. Aaron says, what's your thoughts on Michael Burry's $1.6 billion short? All right. You sure you want the answer to that? Okay. Well, here we go. What do I think about Michael Burry's $1.6 billion short? Well, I got to tell you, as of right now, this moment, some people would say he's early because from a technical standpoint, the Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, and the Russell are in long-term bull markets. Okay. Not only that, but they are also in the intermediate term still in bull market. So they're in locked-in bull markets. However, he's not early in the sense that in the Dow, in the S&P, in the Nasdaq 100, and the Russell, we have bearish trend momentum readings. What have I always explained to you about bearish trend momentum readings? A bearish trend momentum reading is an indicator that says sell rallies. So not only in a bearish trend momentum reading are you selling rallies, but you are in a position to be early once the trend literally changes from a locked-in bull market to the beginning stages of a bear market and the market putting in a top. Now, what can happen is you can get a correction that goes deep enough to go from a locked-in bull market to the potential beginning stages of a bear market, only for the bull market to reverse and reclaim the price action and start trending and rallying again. That can happen in really powerful trends. Okay, that can happen. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. Okay, 9 times out of 10, it does not. 9 times out of 10, that market will have a trend momentum reading that accelerates the direction of the price action. So, are we still in locked in bull markets per se in the stock indices? Yes, we are. Cannot lie and mislead anyone according to that. So that means that the down swings that we're seeing now with these markets starting to get deeper in the pullback turning. What happens is when you're in a bull market, what happens is As prices begin to put in a short-term top, you get a pullback. A pullback is just an area where the market, where price action declines enough to get new longs involved, and then the market starts trending again. All right, breaking out to new highs. The second stage of the pullback is when the pullback gets deep enough to turn into a full-blown correction. Corrections, 99.9% of the time, once you get into a corrective zone or area or status, it's normally followed by a bearish trend momentum reading. That's a locked in situation where the price action will continue to decline with acceleration. All right. 9 times out of 10, when that happens, you do eventually go into a bear market. All right. If that happens, if the long-term trend is bullish, but your short-term trend turns to bearish, if it's bearish with a bearish trend momentum reading, that's almost a recipe for game over. Top is in, you're not coming back, you're going into a bear market. But like I said, there is rare occasion when the market will regroup itself and then explode. But like I said, that is not the norm. That is typically not the norm. I've even seen it where you'll be in a locked-in bull market. You start a pullback. The pullback gains momentum downside and then turns to a correction. Then that correction gains momentum, and now you've switched from a bull market all the way to a bear market altogether. I have seen that. I've seen that happen. All right, and then the market goes back to bull market. It only stays like that for maybe a week or two. Right? So that can happen. When we look at the market on a daily basis, that's what we're gauging. We're gauging the trend momentum readings to see whether or not the decline is going to turn into something else. And that's what we base all of our decisions off of. That's the primary thing that we're looking at, because that tells us where we are within the market trends and dynamics. So it's very important to look at that way. So with that being said, I don't think he's early. I think he's right on time because he's shorting into a bearish trend momentum reading. You're never wrong for doing that. Even if the downtrend is short-lived, you're never wrong for doing that. If the market turns after that, turns up, you can just simply peel off your short and walk away with whatever profit you got from that short-term decline. So you're never wrong. As a trader, you're never wrong for riding the up and downs of the market. If it's bullish this week and then bearish next week, and you shift from a long perspective to a short one, you're not wrong. All right. If the longer term trend then reclaims the price action in the third week and goes bullish again, and you turn and go bullish, you weren't wrong for doing so. There's two perspectives when you're trend trading. One is to trade the long term trend. The other perspective is to trade in between. So you can trade you can trade with the trend, which is great, trend following. But when the market puts in a short-term top, you can use that as an opportunity to take the profit off the table and wait for the next buy signal, or you can start shorting. You're not wrong for doing that when the trend momentum shifts. All right. I'm not talking about just daily up and downs of the price action. Just because the market may be down 200 points today when it doesn't mean that you're in a negative trend momentum reading. It just means that the market pulled back. Markets can pull back sharply without even changing the trend momentum. The Dow can fall hundreds of points and still be bullish the next day. All right. That's just how it is. Okay. You measure the trend momentum readings by analyzing the depth of the internals of the intraday price action and taking into account Oh man, is that my man Rosa? Dude, I haven't hollered at you forever. Get at me, man. Get at me. Get at me, man. Postwavetrading.com. You can send a message through there, man. We need to catch up and chat. Haven't hollered at you in forever, man. I hope all is well with you and yours, my man. Be encouraged. Good to have you back, man. Um, yeah, so you have to always keep this in mind when you're looking at these things. You take really three perspectives. Some people like to use four. I like three. I like the intraday coupled with the daily and the weekly, because the intraday determines the change of the daily. The daily changes determine the outcome of the weekly. All right. It's not in reverse, it's in that order. All right. So I like looking at those things. I like looking at the market depth. I like looking at the put call ratios. I like looking at a whole bunch of metrics to let me know what happened in that day. And since, the inception of Globex in, like, was it 97, 99, markets have become a little bit more tech savvy and tricky. You got dark pools, you got ways to spoof orders and hide orders, and you got all these different things that you can do. All right. And services that exchanges offer, brokers, certain brokerages can offer you. So it's different now. You got, you still got your level 2 NASDAQ and all that stuff, but there's different ways to hide what you're doing if you are a very large operator in the markets. If I'm trading whatever the max contract is on the S&P 500, let's say it's 5,000. I think it still is. It used to be anyway. 5,000 contracts. I am short 5,000. E-mini S&P 500 futures contracts. Right. I can. It would be foolish for me just to go in at one time and be like, sell 5,000, because now I'm going to move the market and be trading against myself. But if there's a way that you can break those orders down a little bit here at this price ladder, a little bit there, that price on the price ladder, you can stagger it out. You can do it with different accounts. There's different ways to do things, okay, as not to spook the market. Because believe it or not, depending on what market you're trading, the market depth is so that no matter how big your order is, you're not moving that market, because the market trades like $1 trillion a day. You know what I'm saying? Like Forex, for instance. I can go in and say, let me short $1 million worth of the euro, and the market won't even budge, not even a pip. I can go in and trade the the U.S. Treasury futures, the big T bonds or whatever, T notes. I can put in a big order and the market will basically laugh at me. I won't move it not even one tick. But try that in cocoa futures and disaster will befall you. So is he wrong for making such a big bet? Not necessarily. Plus, we don't know the nature of his bet. Is he doing the bet specifically and solely in the options market? Is he shorting indices? Is he shorting individual shares? How is he doing it? Because that matters even more than the fact that he is doing it. If that makes sense. How you move in the markets determines everything. Like I said, if he was just go in and say, I'm gonna short $1 billion SP, well, that would have an unfavorable outcome instantly. But if he staggered it over time, a little bit here, a little bit there, let me put some, maybe buy some puts in Apple, maybe buy some puts in Google, buy some puts in Meta. It depends on how he did it. Like I'm saying, it depends on how he did it. There are different types of options. There are different types of option strategies, myriads of them, from the basic to the most complex. So there's different ways to do things, So I don't know how he did it, because believe it or not, You can do the right thing in the wrong way, and it will spell disaster for you. All right. You have to know how to do it. Now, for those of you who've been with me for a long time, you've heard my stories, my horror stories on how I was right about the market and even executed my orders correctly, only to get screwed and get my face ripped off because of the market that I was dealing with and the type of brokers I was dealing with. This is before online trading. This is when you had to pick up a phone and call a broker or call your order down to the trading floor and say, buy me, sell me, or go through a trade desk and then they would send the order down to the floor. You had to get on a phone. You had to call somebody. In worst case scenario, you had to be on hold for a long period of time while the market's moving without you or moving against you. So those days have long since passed, but the general rule of thumb still applies. If it's a thin market, you're going to kill yourself. If you're dealing with a human being, a dude on the floor, like for instance, the meat traders, the guys in the live cattle pits and the lean hogs and all that, they were famous for taking their tickets home at the end of the day. It was sometimes you wouldn't get a fill for like 2 or 3 days sometimes. Now, believe it or not, they are also famous for repricing you. You know how the government does the jobless claims and how they revise the claims and all that. They revise. Well, in the meat markets back in the day, they would revise your orders, and 9 times out of 10, you would get a better price. So it would always be a blessing. You wake up, oh, here's an extra $50 in my account. Oh, good looking. Yeah, you got repriced. Okay, thank you. So that's kind of like an odd thing back in the day. So it just depends on how Michael Burry did this. How did he go about doing it? What markets did he use? What instruments did he use? Um, for those that are members of postwavetrading.com, and I have taught you that there are ways to participate in the U.S. equity market without directly participating in the U.S. equity market. I can go long or short the stock indices with a synthetic type of a position where I'm not even operating in those physical markets, but yet I am benefiting from what those markets do. There's a way to do it. You're not using futures. You're not doing it. Nope. It's a top secret thing that traders know what I'm talking about. Same thing with precious metals. There is a way for me to participate in gold and silver and benefiting for what those markets do without even trading those commodities. All right. Or even trading mining stocks. That's right. Say gold is in a runaway bull market and we're at $3,000 an ounce today, and it looks like we're going to the moon. But I don't have a futures trading account, and I don't want to trade mining stocks. How can I participate? And I don't want to trade spot because it's too risky. So what do? There is a way, ladies and gentlemen. Even the smallest trader who says I only got $500 to invest, there is a way that you, sir or man, with $500 can benefit from trading in the crude oil markets and trading in the precious metals markets without trading spot, without trading mining shares, and without trading commodity futures, and benefit. Oh, and not trading options on stocks or options on commodity futures, and benefit from what happens in those markets. Yes, sir, Bob. So what did Michael Burry do? Did he use some of those kind of lesser known avenues? I don't know. I don't know how he did it. I really don't. I don't know. But I don't think he's wrong because we have a bearish trend momentum reading in the stock indices, and we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so today is day 10. So today marks 2 weeks of being in a bearish trend momentum reading in the Dow. And technically speaking, if you shorted at that time period, you're good to go right now. You're seeing green on the screen in your account. So right now he's not wrong. Right now he is not wrong. If he has a way to tighten up his stops on his positions, if he even uses stops, but if he's using options, he doesn't technically necessarily have to use stops. So I don't know what he's doing. Did he do a synthetic position? For those that don't know what synthetic positions are, go to postwaytrading.com. We have tutorials on that. There's a way to trade synthetic positions in equities and synthetic positions in commodity futures. There's a way to do that. If you want to be long or short a market without using a traditional stop loss order, there's a way to do a synthetic position that you don't have that. All right. So it just depends, man. But for right now, today, as of right now, he is not wrong, because stock indices are in the bearish trend momentum readings, and we are heading lower even as we speak. So he's not wrong. Not wrong. All right. So let's see what else we got. Good point. My man Golden Burke says there's no country where to escape except to live on a yacht in international waters. Yeah, pretty much, right? Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, because look, we have what? Globalism, right? We have a global economy. So for the most part, every country has an investment in another country. All right. Any country that's not a third world country has investments in other countries. China has U.S. investments. U.S. has China investments. Right. And both import and export stuff from each other. We import things from China. China imports things from the U.S. Right. So with that being said, if a country is having some problems, then it's going to affect the investments of other countries, which in turn affects the other countries' financial well-being. You see what I'm saying? So you're right. It depends. And my man Kevin says, good morning, Dexter. Right-left paradigm has to keep going to keep minds numb and people under control. That's correct. As long as they got the infighting going, as long as people, the citizenry are fighting each other, they're not fighting the government. And when I mean fighting the government, I don't mean taking up arms and, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about at the ballot box, with your vote, using the power of your vote. That's how you fight. And you get the whack people out of office and replace them with the right people. But even that doesn't matter anymore. Maybe 50 plus years ago, it did matter and you could work that way, but now it doesn't. And there's a reason for that. It's because the octopus's tentacles have been entrenched in every avenue of society to the point where your individual vote really doesn't count. They've already proven and shown to you that they can rig an election. All right? People are not elected, they're selected from the president on down to the governor to the mayor. Selected, not elected. Remember that. How many times has a quote unquote president candidate won the popular vote only to lose the election? Think about that. All right. So yeah, these are perilous times we're living in. But stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to take this a step further and we're going to ask some really tough questions. So you're going to need to bring your thinking caps. With that being said, you know what it is, man. This is Thinking Outside the Box. Thank you for tuning in. Share it with a friend. Smash the like button. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.